We should advocate for an equal and orderly, multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization.
Have you ever watched international news and felt lost because of the difficult words and expressions? Don't worry, today we're going to break down a real news clip step by step so that you can understand every part. This news report is about a big meeting, or as they call it, a summit in China. World leaders like Xi Jinping from China, Vladimir Putin from Russia, and Narendra Modi from India were all there. In the report, the journalists use a lot of expressions that are not easy for English learners. That's what we're going to focus on. What will happen in the lesson? 1, we'll watch and listen to a piece of the news, then we'll go back and explain the important words and expressions one by one. I'll give you the meaning, how it's used in the context, and also some simple examples you can remember. All right, let's start with the first part of the news and see what expressions we can learn from it.
New comments from Chinese leader Xi Jinping, who took a veiled dig at the U.S. as he promoted his vision of a new global order. Xi told leaders at a major summit, quote, "The house rules of a few countries should not be imposed by others." He said more as well.
Okay, let's look at the first expression in the news, a veiled dig. Now, what does that mean? A veiled dig is when someone criticizes another person, but not directly. It's kind of hidden, maybe polite on the surface, but still negative deep down. In the news, Xi Jinping wasn't completely attacking the US, but his words carried a hidden criticism. For example, imagine in a meeting, someone says, "Some departments are very lazy." That could be a veiled dig at the finance team, right? They didn't say the exact name of the team, but everybody knows who they mean.
He promoted his vision of a new global order.
Next, we hear global order. This simply means the system of how countries in the world deal with each other. Who has power? Who makes the rules? Who follows the rules? In the news, Xi was talking about changing the global order, so it's not only the US leading, but more countries sharing the power. For example, the war changed the global order, making smaller countries stronger in world politics.
Xi told leaders at a major summit, quote,
"Now the word summit. Literally, a summit is the very top of a mountain. But in politics, it means a very important meeting at the highest level, a meeting of presidents or prime ministers. In the news, they said a major summit, meaning a big meeting in China where leaders from many countries gathered. Now, an example for the literal use. They reached the summit of Mount Everest. Now, another example for the political context. The Peace Summit brought together leaders from 5 different countries.
The house rules of a few countries should not be imposed by others. He said more as well.
And then we have the word imposed. To impose means to force something on people, even if they don't want it. In the news, Xi was saying that powerful nations should not impose their rules on weaker nations. For example, the teacher imposed strict rules on the students even though they disagreed.
We should advocate for an equal and orderly, multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, and make the global governance system more just and equitable.
All right, let's move to the next expression, advocate. To advocate means to speak up for something, to support it, or to defend it. Usually it's about an idea, a cause, or a group of people. In the news, Xi was encouraging leaders to advocate for fairness and balance in the world system. For example, she advocates for better healthcare for poor communities. It means she speaks up and supports that idea.
We should advocate for an equal and orderly, multipolar world.
Now, the word multipolar. This one sounds a bit technical, but it's simple. Multipolar means that power is spread across many big countries, not just one or two. In the past, the US had the most power, but Xi wanted a world where several countries share the power together, like China, India, and Russia. For example, analysts say the 21st century is becoming multipolar with influence shared between the US, China, and Europe.
And make the global governance system more just and equitable.
And the last word in this part is equitable. Equitable means fair and just, something that treats everybody equally. In the news, Xi said he wanted rules in international politics to be equitable, not favoring only one side. For example, the new law ensures an equitable distribution of resources among all cities. That means every city gets a fair share.
What's truly interesting is who was there rubbing shoulders with Xi. Russia's Vladimir Putin and India's Narendra Modi all shared a laugh with the Chinese leader on the sidelines, really almost literally rubbing shoulders. For Modi, it was his first trip to China in 7 years.
Next, we hear the phrase rubbing shoulders. Now, this doesn't mean literally they're rubbing their shoulders against someone. It's an expression that means meeting or mixing with important or famous people. In the news, Putin, Modi, and Xi were rubbing shoulders. It means standing close together, talking, communicating, and showing cooperation. For example, at the award show, the young singer was rubbing shoulders with international celebrities.
All shared a laugh with the Chinese leader on the sidelines, really almost literally rubbing shoulders. For Modi, it was his first trip to China in 7 years.
Then we have on the sidelines. Literally, the sidelines are the lines next to a sports field where the players are not on the field, just watching. Figuratively, it means not being directly involved, just staying outside the main action. In the news, leaders were meeting and chatting casually on the sidelines of the summit, not during its official speeches and the official times. For example, he stayed on the sidelines of the argument, not taking sides.
Let's get right to CNN's Ivan Watson, who is in Tianjin, China, with this rather extraordinary summit. Ivan.
That's right, and it's wrapping up now. The leaders of countries from across the Middle East and Asia have been gathering in this huge building here. Where, they boast that they represent nearly 50% of the world's population, starting to see their motorcades leave now, John.
All right, let's look at the phrase, it's wrapping up. To wrap up means to finish or come to an end, to summarize, to conclude. In the news, they said the summit in Tianjin was wrapping up. That means it was ending and leaders were starting to leave. For example, the concert is wrapping up with the final song.
The leaders of countries from across the Middle East and Asia have been gathering in this huge building here. Where,
Next one is have been gathering. This is the present perfect continuous tense in English grammar. We use it when an action started in the past and is still happening now. In the news, leaders started coming together earlier, and they were still there at the time of reporting. For example, people have been gathering at the park all morning to celebrate.
They boast that they represent nearly 50% of the world's population.
Then we have boast. To boast means to proudly show off something important. In the news, the organizers boasted that the leaders in the summit represented almost half of the world's population. For example, the city boasts the tallest building in the country.
Starting to see their motorcades leave now, John.
And finally, motorcades. A motorcade is a line of cars carrying important people, usually with guards and sirens. In the news, the leaders' motorcades were leaving the building after the summit. For example, the president's motorcade passed through the city center with heavy security.
And I think the enduring image is of those leaders of three of the world's largest countries, Russia, China, and India, looking pretty cordial and happy together, and all agreeing that this is a time of global uncertainty.
Next, let's look at the phrase enduring image. An enduring image is a picture or a memory that stays in people's minds for a long time. In the news, the enduring image of the summit was Russia, China, and India's leaders looking friendly together. That's the picture people will remember for a long time. For example, the enduring image of the trip was children waving flags at the parade.
Of three of the world's largest countries, Russia, China, and India, looking pretty cordial and happy together.
Now the word cordial. Cordial means warm, polite, and friendly, but not too personal or emotional. It's the kind of friendliness we often see in politics or formal situations. In the news, the leaders looked cordial, meaning they were showing respect and friendliness, even though their countries sometimes disagree. For example, they had a cordial meeting despite their past disagreements.
It is notable that the Prime Minister of India was here. He skipped last year's Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, in part, I think, because of the fact that India and China's relations have been pretty bad. About 5 years ago, soldiers from India and China were beating each other to death in skirmishes in a disputed border region in the Himalayas.
All right, now let's look at the phrase because of the fact that. This is really just a longer, more formal way of saying because. In the news, they said Modi skipped the summit because of the fact that India-China relations were bad. That's the reason. For example, the game was canceled because of the fact that it rained all day. Now, we don't always need to say it in a long way. Here are some simpler ways. Because. The game was canceled because it rained. Since. He stayed home since he felt sick. As. She didn't come as she was busy. Due to the fact that. The flight was delayed due to the fact that the weather was bad. On account of the fact that. For example, he was praised on account of the fact that he helped his team.
About 5 years ago, soldiers from India and China were beating each other to death in skirmishes in a disputed border region in the Himalayas.
Next, the word skirmishes. A skirmish is a small, short, and often unpleasant fight. In the news, Indian and Chinese soldiers got into skirmishes at the disputed border. For example, there were several skirmishes between protesters and police.
About 5 years ago, soldiers from India and China were beating each other to death in skirmishes in a disputed border region in the Himalayas.
And that takes us to the word disputed. If something is disputed, it means people or groups argue about it and cannot agree. In the news, the border region between India and China is disputed because both sides claim it as theirs. For example, the ownership of the island is still disputed between the two nations.
He's clearly here mending fences and still stinging from the fact that the Trump administration just days ago imposed 50% tariffs on India, much higher than on India's arch rival Pakistan. And that's seen by many Indian experts as stabbing India in the back and a U-turn on decades of growing U.S.-Indian relations. Watch this place closely, because in a couple days' time, China will go from flexing its diplomatic muscles to flexing military muscles with a huge parade, military parade in Beijing. It will be attended by none other than Vladimir Putin and also the leaders of North Korea and Iran.
Now let's look at the idiom mending fences. This doesn't mean fixing a real fence, guys. It's an idiom, and it means repairing a broken relationship or improving a bad situation. In the news, Modi was trying to mend fences with China to fix their relationship. For example, after their argument, the two friends started mending fences over coffee. Next, steel stinging. To sting usually means to hurt, like a bee sting. But when we say someone is still stinging, it means they are still hurt or upset emotionally. In the news, India was still stinging from the US tariffs. They were still upset. Grammar note here, this is the present continuous tense, guys, showing the feeling was continuing at that time. For example, she was still stinging from the harsh criticism she received yesterday.
And that's seen by many Indian experts as stabbing India in the back.
Now the phrase stabbing in the back. This means betraying someone who trusted you. In the news, many Indians felt that the US stabbed them in the back by suddenly raising tariffs after years of friendship. For example, he accused his colleague of stabbing him in the back by taking credit for his idea.
And that's seen by many Indian experts as stabbing India in the back and a U-turn on decades of growing US-Indian relations.
Then we have a U-turn. Literally, a U-turn is when a car turns back in the opposite direction. Figuratively, it means a complete change of policy or decision. In the news, the US made a political U-turn, changing its position toward India. For example, the company made a U-turn on its decision and rehired the workers.
China will go from flexing its diplomatic muscles to flexing military muscles with a huge parade.
Now, let's talk about flexing. To flex means to tighten and show your muscles. But in everyday language, it means showing off your power, ability, or strength. In the news, China was flexing its military power in the parade. For example, the athlete was flexing his muscles after winning the match. Synonyms can be showing off, demonstrating, displaying, or flaunting.
To flexing military muscles with a huge parade.
And finally, parade. A parade is a public event where people or vehicles move in a line, usually to celebrate or show strength. A military parade is when soldiers and weapons are displayed to show power. In the news, China planned a big military parade in Beijing to show its strength to the world. For example, the soldiers marched proudly in the Independence Day parade. Quiz time. All right, before we finish, let's do a quick test. I'll show you a short part of the news clip again, and then I'll ask you a question. You can choose the answer and write it in the comments down below.
New comments from Chinese leader Xi Jinping, who took a veiled dig at the U.S.
Question 1. In the news, Xi Jinping made a veiled dig at the U.S. What does veiled dig mean? A very loud and open attack. B, a hidden or indirect criticism. C, a joke that everyone laughs at.
Vladimir Putin and India's Narendra Modi all shared a laugh with the Chinese leader on the sidelines.
Question 2 now. The report said leaders were meeting on the sidelines of the summit. What does on the sidelines mean? A, not directly involved, just present or watching. B, sitting in the first row of the meeting. C, traveling in their motorcades.
He's clearly here mending fences and still stinging from the fact that the Trump administration just days ago imposed 50% tariffs on India, much higher than on India's arch rival Pakistan. And that's seen by many Indian experts as stabbing India in the back.
Question 3. India felt the US had stabbed them in the back. What does this phrase, stab someone in the back, mean? A, to literally hurt someone with a knife. To surprise someone with a gift. To betray someone who trusted you. Write your answer in the comments. Great job today. We went through some really useful expressions from this news report today. Things like veiled dig, global order, summit, mending fences, and so much more. Now, when you watch international news, these words won't feel so difficult anymore. more. Remember, the best way to really learn them is to use them. So try to make your own sentences with these expressions and vocabularies and drop them down below in the comments so I can check them for you. And don't forget, I put a short quiz for you earlier in the video, if you remember. There were 3 questions. Drop your answers also in the comments and I'll check how many of you got them right. And if you also enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate if you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss it, miss the next videos. And I would also appreciate if you like the video, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.